too loudly. Anyway, welcome back, YouTubers, to my channel of an everyday life of an Aspie. As you're fully aware, right now I'm sharing the series of Show Us How It's Done if you guys are following me on this channel. And in the previous video I was talking about basically the learning environment, how it's important for students to have a specialized environment where they can learn and adapt to all these changes that may be important to them and whatnot. And also another one is also I talked about the two acronyms, which is the PRES and HANDS. No further ado, this one is basically hopefully the last part of the series, which is the tips and advice for students, parents and lecturers of the like of helping students with learning disabilities to help them grow and actually learn from each other as well as from you of your teaching habits. So as we go, we can focus on what we can control and can influence on the students of how we go about it based on their behaviours, learning styles, techniques, and also just understanding their traits of their learning regardless of what it is, as I mentioned previously earlier about these learning traits of what they do, be it spatial, be it tactile, be it hands-on, be it basically musical, be it whatever it may be. You know, everyone is different in their way of their learning, no matter what it may be. Also, however, we've got to bear in mind we can control and influence on how we can actually change the way they learn, maybe by rewriting their way of their profile, or just rewriting them all these behaviour traits that is behind them for themselves as well as for us. It's something that we can learn for ourselves also. Anyway, just a thing to just an advice here, or just a food for thought for you to share with you all. Just think for a moment about all the different students with the different needs of whatever it may be it dyslexic, dyspraxia, dyscalculator. Excuse my term if I've missed that word out a bit wrong there. But as we know, there are different needs to be met at different levels and stages of their learning, as we know, as they grow up into adults. Like, for example, I will illustrate, like for a child that is maybe in their teens that's getting prepped ready for their exams, we need to be aware that sometimes some of it can be really daunting and scary, and more importantly emotional, where it may lead to some of the students that has a learning disability to an anxiety attack or panic attack where they think that they can't do it. So therefore, again, as I said, it addressed to you all, that maybe we need to change a character profile or some sort of profile about them, and then actually maybe create a proper easy test for them to actually go about their way so that they can succeed in a better way. Another example we could think of real briefly here, you guys, is a child so bright yet refuses to do the whole homework, as I said in the last video, and you're wondering why they're refusing to do the whole homework and they're getting behind with the rest of the class. You know, you need to question yourself, am I teaching the right material for them? Is it easy, understandable? Is it easy for them to grasp in their way of their learning style, be it hands-on, be it if they're listening by ear, if you're giving them some music composition to do? Is it easy for them just to maybe write an essay or a report, whatever it may be of their learning style, and actually their creativity along the way? As I said, that many students with learning disabilities has hidden gifts and talents, and till that time shows out for them to show that talent, you know, it's up to them. And like anything else, it starts with us and ends with us by choice. Learning differences, however, shows up like those behavioural traits in children that shows their behaviour and attitude towards learning. To create a breakthrough, or to break through to these students that has these learning disabilities, however, we need to understand them and their diagnoses, or as what I don't like to call them, the labels of these conditions, be it dyspraxia, ADD, ADHD, dyscalculia, and the like. We need to create a breakthrough in a way of maybe to understand them and their diagnoses, of a way to rewrite the diagnoses as a little medical journal. You know, even though some of these diagnoses that they may be having of these learning disabilities or conditions as such, of the like, of what I've mentioned so many times before, maybe we could recreate it, because obviously in the long run, some of these learning disabilities obviously interact with each other. Like I said in my introduction about my Asperger's syndrome, everything comes under the umbrella of all these other clinical symptoms and diagnoses that doctors and clinicians has been putting us under for so many years. Sometimes also when it comes down to rewriting the diagnoses, sometimes it can be almost like we are rewriting a curse and forever trying to turn it into a blessing. Rewriting another diagnostics, however, can also be fun and experimental along the way for us all to obviously seek out the differences of all these conditions that we have, be it whatever it may be. Some people with learning disabilities, however, will show similar signs and symptoms, as I said before, of the learning profiles that differentiates the instructions to who they are and to who the teachers are teaching. But some concerns has arisen by the teachers when they're teaching about all these questions that I've addressed to you, or, you know, how are they teaching? Is it affecting them in a way that's not actually getting the message across to them? How can they change that kind of character profile of that student to create a better outcome for them? But you need to not to have too many high expectations about these students with these learning disabilities, however, because we need to just, like I said, accept them for who and what they are, like any other child, you know, be it if they do have a condition or not. Also, another thing we need to remember though, unlocking something is great and wonderful for people that has the talents and hidden gifts or even just learning conditions. So therefore, we can actually learn from them in a different way as a person, and not just the label, be it dyslexia, dyspraxia, and the like. Also, hang on to the vision that you may have for the students, as well as maybe just for yourself while you're teaching for these ones that are gifted. Be flexible in the class. However, what I'm meaning there is basically make sure you have enough time for everyone, especially the ones maybe that has these learning disabilities, because as we know, having these time and flexibility schedule around these kids obviously will guarantee in the long run, it will prepare them in the outer world of what is acceptable and not acceptable. Also, fulfilling their promise of whatever that promise that their children is actually trying to promise you to their learning and whatever it may be. When you're dealing with different learning profiles, however, as I said in the earlier piece, be it just, you know, the spatial, the hands-on, musical, by listening by ear, you know, creating music, whatever, you know, it's important to establish your own goals as well as their goals, you know, as well as I said, it can be a point that you can have certain expectations, but not too high of an expectation with a child with a learning disability. And task. What do you expect each child to learn and understand and their task to perform? Another one is also to share the goals with the students, you know, no matter what the goals are with the students, as well as, you know, their goals and puts in between, we can always make it a better outcome. Last but not least, is the second part here, which I'm hoping to address, is what can we do to help these people with the learning disabilities, to wrap it all up, guys. As we know that we're bound to know someone with a learning disability, but if we know the key signs, or shall we say the symptoms or what have you of these learning disabilities, we can make it a better outcome for these students in the long term. We need to know that, however, when they are different, we shouldn't have to just treat them the same way as another one on the street that is different to us, you know. We got to remember that sometimes students with a learning disability may have their different styles and techniques, as I said. Each learning disability, however, as I said so many times before, has a similar trait or similarities and how to manage their needs. As I don't like the term disorder, but I use it as learning disability is defined as a term that's used to describe an individual with an average or above average intelligence who has learning problems of some kind that's clearly shown by their behaviours, not as a result of sensory or intellectual, but maybe as a result of not even emotional or sociological cultural influences. But bear in mind, however, in the ideal world, that there's at least 4 to 6% of children who suffers from a learning disability that we're not aware of. The causes of children that has or suffers from a learning disability is unknown. There has been so many myths, though, however, that needs to be broken of why kids suffer from learning disabilities. Maybe it's because of, like, maybe he's saying, like, they suffered from an alcoholism mother that drank throughout her pregnancy, or a mother that basically, you know, smoked marijuana, or a kid coming home from a broken home, you know, coming through the violence family, you know, they think it's okay just to, you know, be the number one fan of a bully. Whatever it may be, we need to try and break these myths and hopefully find important information that actually will be important for all of us to actually understand children with these learning disabilities, wherever they come from, race, age, gender, and the like. Anyway, however, there are also various factors that may attribute to having a learning disability. As I said, this is usually generally associated how our brain is wired differently, or how it's wired and works in a different way to the normal people. Yeah, but there are other possible factors, however, that has been claimed to be hereditary, maybe, or even environmental. Some students may have difficulty in discriminating between sounds, misunderstanding of grammar, or retrieving words from their mind or from what they hear and interpret. So their vocal comprehension is weak and slow, that they'll need to communicate in a different way, or may not even communicate to us at all, be it that they're really quiet or just the non-verbal kind of person. Yet there is hope, however, for these children with learning disabilities to be identified. The successful approach in identifying children with learning disabilities is using the acronym RTI, which is standing for Response to Intervention. This is scientifically based on the practice that has been used of a curriculum or learning outcomes that can measure the progress of the student of an everyday basis. For some individuals that don't respond to interventions are or can be eligible to be referred to special education if that needs to be arised, however. There are many ways to support people with a learning disability, which are as listed below. Number 1, adapting to the physical environment, i.e., for example, just rearrange the seating arrangements in the classroom. For the ones that may are hearing impaired, maybe put them to the front, and the ones that can engage in a different way, put them to the back. Number 2, adapting to instruction manuals or materials. Create more activities that are hands-on and fun for the ones that are tactile learners, or even just for the ones that maybe wants to learn in a tactile while with the hands-on. Because these are the ones also for these hands-on stuff are for the ones who can't read, but they can create images for some visual learners in the mind, however. Number 3, adapting to instructions. With expectations of what you have on these students, allow them to digest and have time to recall what has been said and taught. Also, give them time to answer your questions as you ask them, however. Again, not to force the answers literally down their throat. Many teachers get really impatient sort of thing when it comes down to this part of the stage here, but we got to realise that we need to be more empathetic, patient with some of the students that are in a different level of understanding in a different learning environment. Create an overview or learning outcomes pretty much for a student. Maybe a little outline of what's next, pretty much going to come up in the lesson, so that they can be known what's expected to learn before they come into the next classroom setting of that class. Be it if it's a science lab experiment that they need to do in the next lesson, you know, give them some sort of material of what they may need to overview themselves on what needs to be done, be it a titration experiment here, say, or even just needing to read up on maybe dissection of some sort of animal. The list goes on. Also, when it comes down to this part of number 3 for these instructions, involve some key words in the learning outcomes with the definitions, and also diagrams and mind maps, so that it's easier for some of them to digest all these instructions. And number 4, adapt to the expectations. What I'm meaning is here, use some sort of portfolio or learning profile kind of sheet of the students' learning, however, of the performance assessment, how they're progressing on, from if they were, you know, from a low level of understanding or learning to the high, or what have you. Sometimes, bear in mind, don't always include tests. As I said before, sometimes tests and exams situation for some students can be daunting, overwhelming, and the like, that creates anxiety attacks. We need to tackle it in a different manner. With this in mind, though, however, we also need to determine what we're going to access for the student. And the next step is to create a task for them that will actually allow them to demonstrate their knowledge, skills, and their reasoning, to obviously be authentic in time, create of or something, we've got to involve the cost, the space, observable and be flexible. But bear in mind also that you could give a deadline to what assessment is due to, so that when it comes down to it, it's okay to have deadlines. And obviously we know that for some students that are really absorbed, be it like with me being an Asperger's syndrome person, obviously I like to have certain deadlines. Sometimes I can work up to that deadline just because it gives me the time to actually research the material of what's needed. Be it, example, if I wanted to research something on a science project that's about to be given to me, I have the put in stuff from you lot. Then if I need to do further research on my own, I can do so. And then if it's like a scientific report, it gives me time to gather up all the information I learn in class and outside class. And if I am stuck, sometimes I might do research on maybe YouTube, here's an example, within Google. And that then when it's due even on that day or even just 2 weeks time, it isn't a deadline. Sometimes with me though, however, I've learned that sometimes it's easier for me just to try and do it before the deadline, but then sometimes the deadline is just a given time frame for how long it's expected for us to work on those schedules. But some of us still basically maybe too self-absorbed on that one given topic, whatever it may be. In language art classes, reading, writing and communication is really important, as we know. Yet with some of these skills some children have with learning disabilities will find it difficult. To help some of them, provide different materials, like maybe here's, say for example, pastels, paint, if they're like the people that likes to draw and create art on their books. Provide large text prints of the ones that has big spaces in between those text prints, so it gives them easier for reading. Provide tracking tools, maybe, to like a text window to help students keep their place while reading. Students that struggles to think and write at the same time. Shows consistencies between print and cursive letters, obviously, of upper and lower cases letters of their shapes. There's a lot of ways to help improve their writing style, such as allowing audio recording for notes and lectures, providing notes and outlines to reduce the amount of writing for the students that are the ones that obviously, you know, can't read or write. Provide graphic organisers for use in note-taking from lectures and books. Last but not least, to help the students that has difficulty in oral communication, draw out the details from students with questions, allow the extended time frame, as I said, for them to respond to you, and also be patient. Never force them to or even just maybe finish their words for them of what they're trying to say, even if some just have a stuttering problem. Be patient with those ones, because this obviously will overwhelm them and frustrate them even more, and then that's when a meltdown stage may happen for the ones that are maybe autistic that do struggle along the way. Provide a quiet area for the activities that you are giving to them, and like answering comprehension questions, or even refer them to a speech therapist again if the need needs to be arisen. Sometimes it can be hard to differentiate between a student with a learning disability or just a low achieving student. Yet with using the RTI of that acronym I told you about, there has been a great success. Support out there for them with the right people, with the right attitude, right thinking and behaviour behind it all can be great also, sort of thing. Also having this right support network goes a long way for anybody. So basically that ends the last part of my series of the show us how it's done of the learning disabilities, pretty much. Thanks for watching, guys. Give me the thumbs up for support and encouragement, sort of thing. Also remember to leave me some comments maybe below for sort of thing, so I know how I'm going about it, or even just private message me about it. Also just, you know the drill, subscribe if you need to, or even just, you know, feel free to contact me on my page on AspieAnswersAll. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all soon.